In this video, I want to speak about trust in sparring. So this is what got me thinking about this topic. Somebody was mentioning that in most martial arts schools they don't really spar much because of liability. Fear of getting sued, and that's definitely something to fear. That's definitely something to worry about as a school owner, and I can see why a lot of schools would shy away from sparring. You know, just one person suing the school could literally shut down the entire school. And I've been sparring for most of my life, since I started martial arts, and it's been over 20 years that I've been sparring people. I probably sparred with over 100 people in my life, and you know, I haven't gotten sued, and there hasn't been any serious injuries. There has been situations where it was close to being serious injuries, but no serious injuries. Um, I've also monitored and conducted sparring amongst individuals as a teacher, and there has been some injuries, um, but still no lawsuits yet. And my point of view is you shouldn't spar against somebody if you think that they're going to sue you. There's a lot of trust involved. The way that I see it is like family. Like a father wouldn't be suing a son, and a son wouldn't be suing a father. That shouldn't happen. I know it does happen sometimes, but it shouldn't happen. Especially when there's love and trust in the family, there's no suing going on. It's family. The father's not really trying to hurt the son's not really trying to hurt the father, they're trying to learn together. And that's how it's supposed to go. The bigger the school gets, the more chances of a lawsuit. That's the downfalls of growing too much. So it's a risk you take when you spar. Not only may you get hurt, but the person that you're sparring might get hurt, and you're also risking the person potentially filing a lawsuit. It's a lot of trust involved, but a lot of it also is getting to know the person, getting to know their temperament, seeing if they're able to control their anger, their emotions. If they cannot control their anger, their emotions, then you shouldn't be sparring with that person. If that person shows prior history of suing people, you should not spar with that person. Um, if that person is angry at you, you definitely should never spar that person. To me, I liken it to firearms. Like, you should never be around a person that has a gun that's angry at you, or just angry in general, because an angry person with a gun could just start shooting people randomly. So you want to stay away from people like that. So you would never spar against somebody that's angry at you. Just as just as you would not want to be around a person that has a gun that's angry at you. But you look at combat sport, they don't teach you how to do it properly. It's like they encourage the fighters to be angry at each other, and then they fight. But in sparring, You should never spar when you're angry at each other. You only spar when you both are happy, feeling good, and at peace. That's when you spar. When there's nothing going on in your life that's bothering you. You don't even, the person doesn't necessarily even have to be angry at you. The person can just be angry at something. You know, angry or depressed, suicidal, whatever. You don't spar somebody like that. You spar people that are in a good mood, happy, joyful. You spar people when things are going well. And then the sparring will be more fun. It will be a learning experience. So it's very important who you spar, how you spar, and just paying attention to the person's emotions, his ability to control his anger. A lot of it is control. Not just control of your techniques physically, but control of your emotions. And the person cannot demonstrate control of his techniques. He cannot demonstrate, so, if he cannot demonstrate control of his emotions, then this person is not fit for sparring. Then it's a very high risk and you should not engage. I also liken it to going to a firing range. You don't know the people that are next to you, but they have guns and they're shooting guns right next to you. They could easily just turn the gun and point it towards you and shoot and kill you. But at the same time, many of us still, or some of us still go to the firing range, including myself. Even though in the back of your mind you know that something like that could happen, you still go. And it's like this trust that you have to have, for your fellow, citizen, your fellow neighbor. Basically, the government entrusted the person to use the gun. The government trusted the person to get a FOID card. So then, with the government trusting that person, then that trust is supposed to influence you to trust a person. And that's why you're standing next to a stranger with a loaded firearm, shooting in the range. Yes, there's a risk. Every time you go to the range, you get shot and killed, but you can't think about that. You just have to have trust in your neighbor. Just like, and it doesn't even have to be the firing range. You could be at the local grocery store, the local Walmart, and there could be people walking around you that have loaded firearms concealed. At any time and moment, they could take out that gun and shoot and kill you. But you can't worry about that. You have to have trust in your neighbor. Trust in the government, and bad things can happen, and they do happen. Just recently, the guy in the military shot up the airport in Fort Lauderdale. Things like that happen. And yes, a lot of businesses get sued. Just recently I read an article, some woman sued Chipotle for like $2.2 billion for using her photo without permission. Yes, there's a lot of people out there that sue. But another factor is I don't have much money. I'm not a rich person, so there's really nothing to sue. Those are some of the downfalls of being rich. When you have lots of riches, millions of dollars, then you gotta be very concerned about people suing you. And the bigger the martial arts school gets, the more commercialized, the more that it becomes a company. There's a bunch of different franchises and just a lot of money being generated, the more chances of them being sued, and the more likely that they're not going to spar with great intensity or spar with realism because of the liability involved. And that there's going to be a lot more regulations because they don't want to get sued. They want to protect their assets. So that's when it becomes less realistic, more fabricated, and just fake. In order to keep something real, sometimes you can't get too big. Even Bruce Lee himself was talking about the best way to teach the martial arts is when you have like a handful of students. Even like having over 30 students or over in one class is just too much to deal with. You got 30 people, 30 students in a class. It just increases the chances of somebody suing, of liability, of somebody getting injured. This sort of advanced training in the martial arts is not for the masses of people. It's for a selected small group of individuals with trust. So essentially you're building a family or a group of people to trust. The larger the group gets, the more likelihood of lawsuits. The less trust that there is, the larger the group gets. So when you walk into a stadium, say the United Center or whatever, and there's 100,000 people there, you can't trust all 100,000 of those people. There's just too many people. But when you got your little family and there's only 5 people in your family, you could trust all 5 people. And that's kind of how sparring goes in the martial arts. There's a lot of trust involved. So it's like an inner circle. And you can't pay for that. It's something that you gotta build over time. Somebody can't just come in and be like, oh, trust me. No, it takes time to build that trust. And not everybody's fit for the sparring. And, as a teacher, you just have to be very aware and very intelligent with how you conduct the sparring and who you allow into that little group of individuals that are worthy of your trust. And that's the only way that you could really grow in the martial arts with something real. You could sit around and talk about martial arts all day, but it boils down to, the physical expression of it. Can you defend yourself? That's the question. And you can never get that from watching a video. You need to do it. So that's why there's very few martial artists out there in this world that are actually really good, because people think that you can learn from a video or reading a book, but it's not that. Not only do you have to study it, you gotta practice it and do it. And just not a lot of people have, the connections with a group of martial artists out there that could guide them towards the development in that area. You know, there's a big difference between, you know, watching a Bruce Lee movie or reading a Bruce Lee book and then actually sparring with Bruce Lee. There's a big difference from watching Mayweather box and then actually sparring with Mayweather. You know, so all these so-called martial art instructors giving tutorials on how to do this and how to do that, you know, to me is a bunch of bullshit if there's no actual sparring taking place between the instructor and the students involved. And then there's all these online certifications and all this bullshit. I mean, the person teaching online hasn't even met the person face to face, and now he wants to certify that person to be capable in martial arts when he not only did they not even meet, but they didn't even spar. You know, to me, it's all bullshit. Like, how can you certify somebody in teaching self-defense or martial arts when that person that you're trying to certify has not even demonstrated proficiency in defending himself with the techniques that you showed him? Sparring is extremely important in a martial artist development, to be a martial artist. And there's just not that many opportunities out there to spar with people that actually know what they're doing. And you know, a lot of it is, you know, you might know some people that are good at martial arts, but it doesn't mean that they trust you, you know, and that they'll take you under their wing to help guide you towards developing yourself to be proficient in defending yourself. You know, and that's what it is. You know, you can't just learn martial arts and be good at it just by reading a book, watching a few videos, practicing at home by yourself or with your brother, your sister. No, because you need to connect with people that know what they're doing. You know, it's like, it's an interaction between you and the teacher or the person that has a lot of experience. It's a physical interaction. You know, it's like, that's what it takes. That can't be replaced with technology. You might have access to the internet. Okay, that's great. You might be able to watch a video from somebody from another country across the world. That's great, but it still doesn't mean that you could physically spar and test out the techniques you've been training in for so long. This entirely different experience that needs to be experienced in the moment. And that's why martial arts can never be globally mastered. That's why any schools that certify hundreds or thousands of people to be martial art teachers, that's complete bullshit. There's no way. Because these techniques need to be proven to be effective through hands-on experience, you know, and martial arts doesn't work that way, where you just make a tutorial, distribute it to the masses, and then now you just certify everybody to be proficient. It doesn't work that way, you know. It takes a lifetime of development, and you need to create like a group of people to train with in a very intense way. That's where you're practicing the techniques and you're experimenting with the techniques, but there's no worries of lawsuits or severe injuries, you know. So a lot of the real martial arts is kept within the family, and if it does expand, it doesn't grow too much. It doesn't burst like a balloon. You can't, the growth potential of it is not unlimited. There's a limit to its growth. Just like there's a limit to how many children you're going to decide to have. You're not going to have 10,000 children. You're not even going to have 1,000 children. You're not even going to have 100 children. You might have 2, 3, 4, 5. But to have anything even over 10 would be too much. There's a limit to how many children you're going to have. There's a limit to how many wives you're going to have. There's a limit to how many brothers and sisters you're going to have. It's not like unlimited profits, like you're selling ice cream or something like that. No. This is a limit to how many people you could trust in this world. There's a limit. So in order for a martial arts school to grow properly, it requires patience and an understanding that this is not just a regular business where anybody could just come in and then they get to spar just because they came through that door. No. It takes time to get to know each person and to develop trust with everybody that gets involved with sparring. And that's just the reality of it.